Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yogah Karmasu Kaushalam.
Forms of communication. Hello students, I am Dr. Rinki Menon, Assistant Professor presently working at Sri Narayana College of Commerce, Gujarat University. Today, I would be delivering a lecture in the subject of business communication. The course objective. The course aims to make students understand the basic concepts of business communication and develop conceptual clarity and logical reasoning so that they can use them. The course content. The course comprises of various concepts of communication. I would start with the third unit that deals with the forms of communication. Now, let's begin with today's module that we shall cover. After today's lecture, you shall be able to take an insight into the basic types of communication. Secondly, understand the forms of communication and also discuss the pros and cons of these forms. Next, we shall discuss the different communication networks used for communication. So, let's get started with the basics. The word communication has been derived from the Latin word communis, that means common. However, communication incorporates, besides commonality, the concepts of transfer, meaning, and information. Communication can be defined as the process through which two or more persons come to exchange ideas and create an understanding amongst themselves. Communication is an exchange of facts, ideas, opinions, or emotions by two or more persons. Communication transmits information not only about tangible facts and determinable ideas and opinions but also about emotions. When a communicator passes on or transmits some information, he or she may also either deliberately or unconsciously be communicating his attitude or the frame of his mind. And sometimes the latter may be more relevant to the reality that is being communicated. Often we may have come across words of high praise spoken in scoffing tone. In such a case, the word signifies nothing and the tone is the real thing. Similarly, high-sounding expressions of bravery may be only a mask to conceal a person's timidity and cowardice that may be betrayed by his facial expressions. If you need proof of the importance of communication to organize activity, you need to only apply your good logic to any real-life example. Take a very simple organization made up of just two, that is you and the other person. Assume that this organization has an objective, one that is unfamiliar to each of you. Now assume that each of you no longer can communicate. You cannot read, you cannot speak, you cannot write, you cannot gesture, you cannot draw. If the two of you make any progress at all, it is likely to be throughout individual efforts. Strain your imagination as you will, there simply is no likelihood of coordinated effort without communication. Needless to say, communication is the ingredient that makes organization possible. It is the vehicle through which the basic management functions are carried out. Managers direct through communication, they coordinate through communication, they staff, plan and control through communication. Virtually, all actions takes place in an organization are preceded by communication. Just how much communication a business organization needs depends on a number of factors. The nature of the business is certainly one. Sub-businesses such as insurance companies have a much greater need to communicate than others do, such as data entry services. The communications organization plan also affects the volume of communication, for it generates much of the information flow. Finally, The people who make the organization affect the extent of communication. As we would point out later, every human being is different. Each one has a unique communication needs and abilities. Thus, varying or different combination of people produce varying or different needs for communication. The main objective of this lecture is to understand the types of communication. It is apparent that when communication takes place amongst individuals belonging to various categories and backgrounds, they put into operation various types of communication. These are the formal types of communication, informal types of communication, oral communication, that is face to face, oral communication from a distance, written communication, non-verbal communication, grapevine communication, feedback communication, visual communication and active listening. Sign languages are the language of the deaf community. When the individuals suffer from speech disabilities and hearing impairments, they make use of sign language in communicating. While communicating, it is necessary for the individuals to keep normal face expressions. Now, let's move ahead to the next topic, that is type of communication. Communication basically can be divided into two types. One, internal communication, and the second is external communication. Starting with the internal communication. When people within the organization communicate with one another, it is said to be an internal communication. Employees of an organization do so to work as a team and realize their common goals. Internal communication could be official or unofficial. It could be individual to individual. It could be individual to a group of people, or group of individuals to an individual, department to department, etc. Most of the internal communication is in the oral form and the tone is generally informal. People also communicate within the organization at a personal level. This is also known as informal communication. A good example is that of a grapevine, which is present in some measure everywhere. If the atmosphere is secretive, it encourages the spread of rumors and half-truths. Intelligent managers use this human weakness to their advantage by sharing favorable information with the employees. Of the various modes of visual communication, the most likely ones to be used in internal communication are slides, internet with the use of multimedia or pagers, etc. All modes of non-verbal communication may be used in internal communication. Some of the modes of written communication are memos, report, office order, circulars, staff newsletter, emails, fax, notices, agenda, notice on agendas, minutes of the meeting, manuals, etc. Other than the radio, all the other modes of oral communication stated earlier could be used in internal communication. Now, effective internal communication is considered important for the following reasons. First, businesses have grown in size. For its healthy and even growth, it is extremely important that the central organization maintains a thorough and up-to-date knowledge of the various activities at the branch offices and in turn keep the branch offices acquainted with the various activities at the center, and some kind of link is maintained among the various branches. This calls for an effective and efficient network of communication. Second, business activities has become extremely complex, this being an age of specialization. Planning, production, sales, stores, advertising, financing, accounts, welfare, etc. are handled by different departments. If these departments do not communicate with one another as well as with the management, there will be no coordination among them. This may give rise to some awkward and embarrassing situation for the management. When production is fully geared up, the store department may report the shortage or non-availability of raw material. The planners have spent one full month to work out the details of a new project, may suddenly discover that there are no finances available to execute the project. Coming to the third reason, effective communication promotes a spirit of understanding and cooperation. If there exists effective communication between the management and the employees, it helps to bring about an atmosphere of mutual trust and confidence. The employees know exactly what is expected of them. The management is aware of the potentialities and limitations of the employees and knows how to exploit the first and make up for the latter. They also develop a sense of belonging and loyalty to the enterprise. The fourth reason, the larger the size of organization, the greater generally is the degree of specialization and division of labor, and hence the more urgent is the need for coordination. This coordination requires mutual understanding about the organization goals, the mode of their achievement, and the interrelationship between the work being performed by various individuals, and all this can be achieved through communication only. Effective communication as such is essential in any type of human grouping. Moving on to the second type of communication, that is external communication. When the people in the organization communicate with anyone outside the organization, it is called external communication. These people may be clients or customers, dealers or distributors, media, government agencies, general public, regulatory bodies, authorities, etc. Letters and circulars, price list, manuals, purchase orders, customized reports, brochures and service calls, tender documents, advertisements, customers' feedback, materials are all external communication methods. Modern business houses spend considerable time, money and effort on improving their public image since they realize that they are dependent on the external support. External communication has been mainly formal and largely documented, but there is an increasing trend to make it informal. Some of the modes of written communication that may be used are circular, graphs or charts, emails, fax, forms or questionnaires, letters, advertisements, customer newsletters, press releases, invitations, leaflet or brochures or handbills, manuals, telegrams, etc. Other than that, intercom, dictation, teleconferencing, brainstorming sessions and grapevine, all the other modes of oral communication stated earlier can be used in external communication. All the modes of visual and audio-visual communication too may be used in external communication. All modes of non-verbal communication may also be used in external communication depending on the situation, circumstances and means of communication chosen for the purpose. External communication includes communication with the government agencies and departments on the one hand and distributors, retailers, individual customers and general public on the other hand. First, government agencies and departments, business organizations are required to deal with licensing authorities, foreign trade offices, custom authorities, banks and their other financial institutions, income tax and sales tax offices, post offices, transporters, etc. Quite frequently, they find themselves in tricky situations that can be handled only through tactful negotiation and nothing but communication. The second external can be distributors, retailers, individual customers, etc. Modern business is a highly competitive phenomenon. Each product of common consumption is available in hundreds of brands, not all of which sell equally well. The third external format may be marketing research has revealed that organizations that can communicate better also sell better. Sales are promoted through persuasion and persuasion is very important aspect of communication. Third, communication skill is also required as a job requirement. Some areas like personal, public relations, marketing, sales, labor relations call for exceptional communication skills. Professionals like editors, writers, teachers, advocates, researchers, etc. need a highly developed ability to communicate. Executives are also expected to make speeches, prepare pamphlets, brochures, souvenirs and give interviews to the media in proper order to project a favorable image of their organization. Thus, the ability to communicate effectively has become a very important job requirement these days. Forms of communication. Forms of communication can be divided into two main parts: verbal communication, non-verbal communication. Verbal communication is further divided into written, oral, visual and audiovisual communication forms. The means or forms of communication, as is evident from the figure above, are broadly classified into verbal communication entails use of words to convey messages either in speech or through writing, and non-verbal communication where messages are communicated through body language, that is facial expressions and gestures. There are a variety of modes through which one can communicate, most of which you may be familiar with and may have also used or been the recipient at some point of time. Starting with verbal communication, it is a written or a spoken message that uses words to exchange ideas or information. Words are selected in phrases, sentences and paragraphs depending upon the results of verbal communication is trying to achieve. The means of verbal communication are written communication, oral communication, visual communication, audiovisual communication. Starting with the first one, that is written communication. In the written form, it may require drafting of letters and circulars, proposals, memos and business reports of varying kinds and which include memos, reports, office orders, circulars, graphs or charts, staff newsletters, emails, form or questionnaires, letter, notices, agendas, notes on agendas, minutes of the meeting, advertisements, customers newsletter, press releases, invitation, leaflet, brochure or handbills, manuals. Further, understanding the advantages and disadvantages of written form of communication. Written communication has several advantages, although the disadvantages of written communication are equally serious. Starting with the advantages. First, it allows us sufficient time for planning the document we need to propose to create, taking into account the purpose for which it is being written. Second, it also enables us to revise the contents if we find them unsuitable for the recipient from the point of view of clarity or interest. Third, to display what we have written, we have a variety of recent and traditional trends to choose from. There is also a scope to use tastefully designed stationery for the purpose. Fourth, the use of headings and bullets enable us to organize the material for a better understanding. The fifth advantage is information in the written form may be filled or retrieved at our convenience. Its permanence facilitates prolonged correspondence. Now, moving on to the other side of the coin, that is disadvantages. The first one, it takes much more time to compose a message in written form. Therefore, it can be expensive. Second, it also tends to suffer from the limitation of the sender, like the assumptions or prejudices, and the delayed feedback makes it worse. Third, the inadequacies of the first message may only be revealed when the reply arrives. Fourth, communication in writing suffers from the lack of congruence with non-verbal communication. So, now moving on to the second type of verbal communication, that is oral communication. Research studies have shown that 80% of the communication by executives of a company is in the oral form. The modes of oral communication include telephone or cellular phone, messages, intercom, face-to-face discussions, meetings or conferences, presentation, dictaphone or dictation, conversations, radio, teleconferences, speeches, brainstorming sessions and grapevines, and interviews. Advantages or importance of oral communication in the business. Speech is one of the earliest as well as the widely used medium of communication. We can retrace our memory to the days of Socrates, Demosthenes and others who were great and renowned orators. In fact, talking has achieved bringing into being great institutions. The world-renowned insurance company Lloyd's is the brainchild of some merchants and ship owners who used to meet and discuss the matters of mutual interest at coffee houses on the banks of the river Thames. The Bank of England, the oldest in UK, was born out of the deliberations the goldsmiths had amidst themselves. There were and there are great personalities who hold the audience spellbound. Every day in business, people come into conversation, the superior with the subordinate, the superior among themselves, the subordinate among themselves, the customer with the suppliers and the suppliers with the clients, and so on and so forth. Effective oral communication is a passport to success in business. No fixed norms can be set for effective oral communication. Factors like audience, size of the audience, the degree of significance attached to the information to be spoken out, fear of the boss, fear of status, fear of everyone's own self-advancement all affect oral communication. Often, the chief of corporation appearing on televisions or radios or at meetings picks high words as if he is in high rope walker, knowing that a single word wrongly uttered or spoken may shatter his image or that of the corporation or leader which he heads. It is true that all business managers should be adept at communication, since they have to communicate to various people at various places with various facts and figures, financial or non-financial implication of which may have significant impact on the management of the business. Business communication itself is a difficult subject. It is also very difficult to separate it from everyday activities of business people, as it has acquired special significance in the life of people's business. It is said a successful businessman should be first of all very conversant with the techniques and the art of communication in order to make his assignments a successful one. In the earlier days, much time was spent in generating data of all kinds. However, not much attention was given to the quality of transmission of information. It depends upon the presentation of information by using appropriate words and medium, which upgrades the value of information by the receiver. As stated earlier, oral communication is the most frequently used means of transmitting messages in business. It is resorted to more often than any other type of communication. The reason for the popularity of oral communication are its advantages. They are: first, oral communication saves time. It is said time is money. Whenever, wherever action needs to be taken instantly or immediately, the best way to expedite action is to transmit necessary messages orally. Second, oral communication helps busy people to reassign their workload quickly by giving necessary instructions, guidance and providing information to subordinates. It thus saves time and quickens the action. The third reason, oral communication provides the opportunity for feedback and clarification. This process of communication helps the sender of the message to clarify each and every point instantly. The receiver at the same time can also express his opinion, views or emotion on the spot. He can ask for clarifications whenever required and get himself satisfied. Thus, clarity is better ensured and makes the communication more effective and purposeful. Fourth reason, oral communication helps to convey the message more appropriate with suitable tones, voice and use of words. It can instantly make the receiver of the message understand the content of communication and the significance thereof assigned to any particular matter of communication. The fifth advantage, Oral communication is an effective tool for persuasion in management. It gives a personal touch to communication. For this reason, supervisors and executives in all sort of business enterprises or marketing prefer to communication their views, ideas and opinions orally. Sixth advantage, oral communication is very effective in communicating with groups. It helps the speaker to establish personal contact with a group of people and make the people understand his opinions and views at a single point of time. The speaker can also hear about the group's reaction subsequently. Seventh advantage, oral communication is economic also. It saves man-hours to be spent in preparing notes, explanation, circulars, etc. It also saves the stationery of the organization. Eighth advantage, withdrawal of oral communication is comparatively an easy task. There are at times situations in the businesses where oral communication is preferred to written communication for. The latter may create an official record which may be used as evidence against the person on any legal matter arising later at a point of time. Coming to the disadvantage of oral communication. The disadvantage of oral communication also deserve equal mention, as oral communication by itself is not effective always. It mainly depends on the attitude of the sender and receiver of messages. It should always be kept in the view that communication is not a one-sided activity. The communicator will have to use appropriate words to convey the message as well as develop the ability to receive and react to the communication spontaneously. The use of right words, especially in oral communication, makes the communication more effective. Saying the right words at the right time to the right person will receive best possible response from the receiver. It is not what you say, but how you say it matters in oral communication. Only the right word will get the right response. People, especially in business, should develop a habit to listen to the whole message with meanings, ideas, feelings, intentions and facts conveyed, including things that are unpleasant or unwelcomed. Oral communication is totally dependent on listening. Therefore, bad or partial listening may affect the comprehension of the message. Since the feedback is instant, therefore, the process may be extremely lengthy. Some meetings go on endlessly without producing appropriate results. Oral communication generally has no record or legal liability. Therefore, it is strongly recommended to confirm important oral messages in writing. Similarly, the economy of oral communication is dependent on control. Telephone calls, unless kept brief, may also cost a lot of money. Unfamiliar accents and pronunciation caused by regional variations and mother tongue interference often lead to temporary difficulties for the recipients. In short, it is important to exercise control in order to derive the benefits of oral communication. Coming to the third form of communication, that is visual communication. Visual communication could be with words or pictures or a combination of both, and which include graphs, tables or charts, maps, models, demonstrations, slides, flip charts, neon hoardings, printed or painted pictures, posters, etc., internet without use of multimedia. The modes of visual communication are useful tools for conveying information in a manner that makes the data and any relationship between variables clearer and easier for the receiver to follow. They can be used on their own, but the maximum benefit can be gained from them if they are used in a complement of the main message, because they are more capable of attracting and retaining the attention of the receiver than speech or written words. The main advantage of using visual communication is that the message can be conveyed using this mode is easily remembered by the receiver and for a long period of time. However, using this mode is also expensive, which is its disadvantage. Coming to the fourth form of verbal communication, that is audio-visual communication. The rapid advancement taking place in the field of information technology have brought about unprecedented changes in communication systems all over the world. In this scenario, the modes of audio-visual communication assume more importance. The means of audio-visual communication include television or videos or capable, cinema, internet with multimedia, video conferences, presentation using visual aids or electronic presentation. The greatest advantage of this mode is that it aims at stimulating the senses of both sight and hearing simultaneously, and this enhances the effectiveness of the message. The other advantage are it is wider reach and the fact that the message is remembered for a much longer time than it would be if it had been conveyed by any other mode of communication. Here again, the high cost factor involved is the greatest disadvantage. Moving on to the other part of form of communication, that is non-verbal communication. Non-verbal communication includes facial expressions, gestures, movements, eye contacts, nodding in the head and physical appearances. It is an unspoken or unwritten message that uses body language. It may be used by itself, for example, frowning, smiling at someone, or along with oral communication. In a situation involving the use of oral communication, non-verbal signs play an equally important role. While listening to someone, one may also be looking at the person. Their facial expressions such as a smile, a frown may strengthen the verbal message. The entire body language from large gestures to proximity with the listener may help emphasize the contents of the message. Alternatively, if the non-verbal communication is absent, it leaves the recipient guessing. The British stiff upper lip, which looks down upon display of emotion in a public, is also a good example. Similarly, in the case of verbal and non-verbal congruence, the results may be confusion and even a communication failure. It is important to note two things. In simple situation, non-verbal communication may suffice itself. For example, it will be perfectly in order to smile at a guest and escort him in without speaking a word. Second, this form of communication has a strong cultural content. The Arabs and Latin Americans are prone to move closer to the listener as well as maintain more eye contact than the Europeans do. Similarly, physical contact is considered a powerful tone for communication, but touching and acquaintance, the handshake expected, is almost a taboo among the British, insignificant in America and common in Latin America. So, how to select the form of communication? Choice of forms of communication, organization and size and policy, nature of the message, distance involved, cost factor and resources. Choosing the right means and mode of communication plays a vital or important role in the effectiveness of the message being communicated, and such choice depends on various factors such as 1. Organization size and policy. If the organization is small, probably more communication will be oral rather than long organization where it may be in writing. The policy for communication would also play a major part in influencing one choice of mode of communication. Second, cost factor. The main point to be considered here would be to evaluate whether the cost involved in sending the message would be commensurate with the results expected. Third, the nature of message. Whether message is confidential in nature, urgent or important, etc., and whether a matter would require hand delivery or to be sent by registered port, etc., also influences the choice of mode and means of communication. Fourth, distance involved. where the message is to be sent is also another vital factor which could influence the choice of means and modes of communication. For example, if a letter is to be sent to a partner in a joint venture in Japan and it is urgent, you would not think of sending someone to personally deliver it. Fifth, resources. The resources available to both the sender and the receiver would also influence your choice. You can only send a fax if the other person or organization has a fax machine. Therefore, we can see that the choice of a particular mode and means of communication will depend on a case-to-case basis and is influenced by various factors. Moving on, let's understand what are communication networks. The types of communication networks are vertical networks, circuit networks, chain networks, wheel network and a star network. The pattern of contacts among the members of the organization and flow of information among them is a communication network. Network helps manager to establish contacts in different patterns through communication flows. The network depends upon the magnitude of the organization, nature of communication channels in the organization and the number of persons involved in the process. There can be many patterns of communication network. The most frequently followed networks are the following ones. First, the vertical network. The vertical network is usually between the superior and the subordinate and vice versa, that is subordinate and the superior. It is a two-way communication. The immediate feedback is possible in this type of communication network. It is a formal network. The second form is circuit network. Under this network, two persons communicate with each other. For example, Mr. A sends a message to Mr. B. After receiving the message, Mr. B communicates the feedback to Mr. A. So, the communication takes the form of a circuit. Therefore, it is known as a circuit network. It is similar to vertical network, but in a circuit network, A and B are not necessarily superiors and subordinates. The third form is a chain network. This network of communication follows the organizational hierarchy and chain of command. All the subordinates receive commands or instruction from their superiors. B, C, D and E, F, G are the subordinates to A in the organizational hierarchy and receive commands from A. Moving on to the fourth type, that is wheel network. Here all subordinates receive commands from one superior, which is highly centralized type of communication network where each subordinate receives commands or instruction from a single authority or superior A and wants the immediate feedback. The star network. Under star communication network, all the members of the group communicate with each other and exchange information. This network is a must for group communication or where teamwork is involved. This network channel of communication is open to all members of the group. The members communicate with each other without any hesitation. The effectiveness of the above networks of communication channel depend upon their users, that is the managers at all levels, their subordinates and the other members of the organization, and above all the seriousness with which all these human resources make use of their facilities provided to them by the organization to accomplish its objectives. Summary. Coming to the end of this session, the individuals are constantly communicating with each other through various forms, gestures, expressions and channels. Communication is not all the time a conscious effort. To sum up today's lecture or session, today we took an insight into the forms of communication and also tried to understand the networks in which communications channelize. I hope you are through with today's lecture. Thank you.